29. Now, what happens if the person has no feeling at all? The person is dead. The person has got no feeling for learning. He's got no feeling for davening. He's got no feeling for anything. The person has no enthusiasm. And this can be extended to any phase of life, by the way. In any phase of life, you go through what is called malaise. When you go through a malaise, you can't function. You don't want to function. You're in a funk. You don't want to go ahead and get up in the morning. You don't want to go ahead and deal with your family. You don't want to be a father to your children. You don't want to work in your business. You don't want to go ahead and do anything because you got no feeling for it. So Perek Tes, Chof Tes. Furthermore, tzorich loshes eitzis benafshe, a person must take counsel in dealing with nafshes habeinanim, dealing with the souls of the intermediate, the regular common person, asher lifomim vitim rabim, sometimes and quite often, yesh lahem timtum halev, they have no feelings at all. It's called the heart is stuffed up. Shenase ke'evan, that the person becomes like a stone. V'lo yochel liftoyach libo, he cannot open up his heart b'shum oifen, in any way possible, laveda shebelev zutfila, to the service of the heart, which is called prayer. Prayer requires the service of the heart. Prayer requires your concentration and your enthusiasm. And what happens if you got no enthusiasm? You have no enthusiasm. Your mind is blank. Your heart is like a stone. You have no feeling and no thoughts that motivate you.
David.
And so since the person can't be motivated, what should you do? Many times he cannot fight with his yetzer hora to sanctify himself with things that are permitted. And sometimes a person, every person has to have self-control. Self-control has many different ways of expression. For example, I want to say something, but I don't say anything because I have to control myself. I see something to eat, but I've got diabetes and I've got other things, and I can't control myself. I can't control what I eat, but I have to go ahead and control myself. That exists in the physical world. In the spiritual world, the spiritual world is that a person who doesn't need to eat certain things shouldn't eat those things. If it's not necessary, then instead of elevating the food, the person goes ahead and causes the food to be descending. Instead of elevating the spark of the food that exists within the food, the person who's gluttonous, who takes things that are unnecessary, takes the food and dumps them into the toilet. So the person who knows this doesn't want to go ahead and overindulge, but he hasn't the power to do so because he doesn't have the emotional wherewithal to control himself. So therefore he cannot go ahead and fight with his yetzer hora l'kadosh atzmei b'mutalei. He cannot sanctify himself with that which is permitted. Because the minute you start talking about things that affect you, you turn it off because you want to become wise. You want to understand things. You want to understand the Kabbalah. But then we start understanding the Kabbalah, you turn off to understanding the Kabbalah. Then we start talking about how to pray, and you don't want to know how to pray. So the person who has that problem should close his book and listen, and maybe he'll learn something. So Yochel Lekadish Lilochim Imayetzi cannot fight with his Yetzer Hora Lekadish Atzma to sanctify himself. Imutaloy to that which is permitted to him. Why can't he do that? Why can't he just have Kabbalah Sel? Why can't he just accept the yoke of heaven? Because the person has a heavy tuchus. His heart is heavy. The person cannot motivate himself. He has no motivation at all. He is totally absent of any kind of inspiration. So what is the counsel for the person? Bezeir HaKodesh, please sit down. Bezeir HaKodesh in the Holy Zohar, the Omer Rav Mesifto, Began Eden, Rav Mesifta said in Gan Eden, a piece of wood where the fire does not go into it, well, you know what you do to it? You know what happens to a piece of wood that fire doesn't catch? You split it into pieces. If you have a piece of wood that is so thick that the fire doesn't catch, you got to go ahead and cut it down to size. So therefore, a body that does not have the fire of the soul within it, God forbid, they have to shmeiss him. They have to give him a shmeiss. They have to patch him. So what does that mean? That means the reason why certain things happen, the reason why those things that happen are negative is because there's no fire of the soul. And therefore, in heaven they decide, hey, this guy's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. He has no passion. He's got no emotion. Whatever he does is mechanical. We got to get this guy to feel for something. So the only thing that they can do is they affect the person's life to make him feel bad. Because at least he has some kind of feeling. If he doesn't have any feeling, if he has no feeling for anyone or anything, then this person is dead. They don't want him dead. So therefore, at least if he hurts and he says, ow, at least he has some kind of feeling. So that's why a person gets suffering, because at least in that suffering, he has some kind of passion and feeling. He wants to strive to go out and to survive, to help himself, to help him get out of his pain and suffering. And when you do that, you suddenly realize that there are other people that are also hurting. And not only the other people that are hurting, there are some people that also are enthusiastic. And when a person begins to feel, then he can be in the ball game. And so, if a piece of wood needs to be split into pieces in order to kindle the fire, that's what happens in life. So, according to that, the person who doesn't have any feelings in a state of depression, in a state of malaise, would have to get and have to suffer. So he says, no. He says, no, you don't have to suffer. The person who is in this state of malaise has to go ahead and cause himself to feel a little down, to feel himself have a little pain about his own station in life. In other words, the person can transform the judgment from getting physical suffering by the fact that the person accepts upon himself a sense of spiritual suffering. So therefore, the person has to make an accounting of himself. And when you make an accounting of yourself, we'll continue this tomorrow, when you make an accounting of yourself about the things that you've done and the opportunities that you've wasted, then the person begins to feel bad about it. That feeling that, oh, I had this opportunity to do good things, I had so much time, and I wasted it, and the person feels bitter about it, that actually does two things. It allows the person to begin to become happy, number one, and number two, it actually takes the person into a position where he does not have to be hurt from heaven.